In the 15th century, inheriting a kingdom as a child was a dangerous thing to do. Usurpers would come at you from every corner, intent on seizing your power. That is just what happened to Babur, who became a Timurid ruler aged 12. Babur, however, was not about to roll over and die. He turned the tables on those who had ousted him, becoming their king and founding the great Mughal Empire that ruled over South Asia for 2 centuries. Babur, whose name means tiger in Persian, was born on February 14th, 1483, in Andijan, a city in the Ferghana Valley of Uzbekistan. At the time, it was part of the Timurid Empire. Babur was the eldest son of Umar Sheikh Mirza, who was the Amir, or ruler of Ferghana. The child was also the direct descendant of 2 of the greatest leaders of the ancient Asian world, Timur on his father's side and Genghis Khan on his mother's side. Following the death of Timur in 1405, his princes fought among themselves for territory. Ferghana was one of many small kingdoms ruled over by a Timurid prince. It was not a very wealthy region, but it was set in a valley that provided excellent pasture land for sheep, goats, and the highly valued Mongol horse. Babur's life changed forever when he was 12 years of age. That was when his father died after an accidental fall from his palace balcony. This meant that Babur was now the rightful Amir of Ferghana. However, older male relatives were quick to challenge his accession. Babur's uncles and cousins allied against him. It was at this critical period, when the young ruler was at his most vulnerable, that his maternal grandmother, Aizan Daulat Begum, who held much sway as a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, became his greatest advocate. She instilled within him the courage and determination to stand firm against his enemies and defend his inheritance. For 7 years after taking the rulership, Babur was in a constant struggle with his relatives. By 1501, Babur had lost, regained, and then again lost Ferghana to his relatives. At the age of 15, he had also seized the Timurid capital of Samarkand, only to lose it 100 days later. The 18-year-old was banished from his homeland and reduced to wandering the mountains of Central Asia with a small band of followers. He ended up in the town of Tashkent, where he found refuge with a maternal uncle. While there, he began to build his army. He was not, however, keen on fighting his relatives for the control over the relatively insignificant town in which he was born. He was interested in a bigger title. When the ruler of Kabul from the Arghun dynasty died suddenly in 1504, Babur saw an opportunity. The heir of the Kabul kingdom was an infant boy. Along with several others, Babur staked his claim, but he did so with the support of a military force. He took possession of the city of Kabul and ruled as its emir until 1526. The 2 decades that Babur spent in Kabul were relatively peaceful. He had established himself as a leader of note. The Timurid princes did not threaten to challenge him. His only threat came from the Uzbeks. Operating under the theory that the best defense was a strong offense, Babur led a raid into Hindustan. Rather than conquering, his goal was to seize as much property as he could, cower the inhabitants of the land, and establish his dominance. He accomplished all 3 of those goals. During his time as Amir of Kabul, Babur also visited the cultured city of Herat. There he met esteemed poet Mir Ali Shir Naval, who had developed the Chagatai language and who influenced Babur to later write his autobiography, the Baburnama, in that language. Babur proved himself to be an effective diplomat, establishing good relations with the 2 main Islamic empires in the region. He formed an alliance with the Safavid Shah, Ismail I of Persia, against the Uzbeks, while also developing a strong relationship with the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Sultan would provide Babur with such essential weaponry as cannons and matchlock rifles for his later invasion of Hindustan. Babur's power grew incrementally during his time in Kabul. Eventually, the princes in Timur, some of whom had previously banished him, looked to him for their protection against invasions by the Uzbeks and other enemies. They gave him the title of Pradash, or King of the Timurids. In 1519, Babur led his army across the Khyber Pass into the Punjab. His goal was to establish a new kingdom that would be far away from the constantly threatening Uzbeks. He was also attracted by the immense wealth that he knew existed in such Hindustani cities as Lahore and Delhi. Another incentive was that in conquering the region, which is modern-day Pakistan, he would be reclaiming territory that was previously part of the Timurid Empire. At the time of Babur's invasion, northern India was ruled by the Muslim Delhi Sultanate. This was a federation of states rather than a united empire. It was ruled over by Sultan Ibrahim of the Afghan Lodi dynasty. He was, however, an unpopular figure, and many of the smaller states and clan leaders were opposed to him. One of them was the governor of the Punjab, Dalwat Khan Lodi, who invited Babur to launch an attack on Delhi and overthrow the Sultan. Babur accepted the offer and began sweeping his army towards Delhi. In April 1526, Babur's army met the forces of Sultan Ibrahim at the First Battle of Panipat. It is believed to have been the first battle in India to use gunpowder, firearms, and field artillery. Babur's 12,000 men were greatly outnumbered, with anywhere between 50,000 and 100,000 Muslim troops, and an additional 100 war elephants coming against them. Babur, however, had the advantage of the guns and cannons, and these made all the difference. Babur also put to good effect military tactics that he had learned from the Ottomans. The result was a resounding victory, with few losses of men. On the other side, 6,000 Muslims, including the Sultan himself, lost their lives. Many of these casualties were the result of being trampled to death by stampeding animals who went berserk at the sound of cannon fire. Babur's success in this battle marked the founding of the Mughal Empire in India. In its wake, the victorious army was able to loot much of the wealth of the great city of Delhi. Babur himself laid claim to the most expensive prize of all, the famous Koh-i-Noor diamond. It would remain in the hands of the Mughal emperors until 1739, when it was seized by the Persian Nadir Shah during his invasion of Delhi. Babur now established himself in Delhi, to the surprise of many of the state rulers who had expected him to ransack the place and then return to his own country. One of them, the Hindustani leader Rana Sanga, formed an alliance with the disaffected Afghan chiefs, the goal of which was to overthrow the new ruler. Babur became aware of the growing conspiracy against him and the huge army that was forming to remove him. He knew that he would have to be at his sharpest to see off the revolt. It was at this time that he decided to stop drinking alcohol. He then put out a call for all Muslims to unite behind him against the Hindu infidel. He was, in effect, calling for a jihad, or holy war. The two armies met on March 16, 1527, at Kanwa, a small village to the east of Agra. The battle largely mirrored Babur's victory over the Sultan a year earlier. Although greatly outnumbered, his use of firearms and cannon once again carried the day. Rana Sanga managed to escape with his life, but his alliance was decimated. The Battle of Kanwa consolidated Babur's power in India. He now began to put in place the foundations of the great Mughal Empire. To intimidate his enemies, he had the skulls of those he had defeated in battle built into a great tower. Babur, however, found it difficult to get used to his new environment. He could not abide the intense heat, and in his autobiography he wrote, "Hindustan is a country of few charms, and the people do not have good looks. The people had no genius, no comprehension of mind, no politeness of manner." To make the environment more to his liking, Babur had gardens planted in the Persian style, with fountains and running water. He also imported plants, flowers, and fruits from his homeland and commissioned the building of monuments and mosques. But Babur was only to enjoy the fruits of reshaping his conquered home for 4 short years. He died in December 1530, at the age of 47. His body was returned to his beloved city of Kabul, where he was buried. He was succeeded to the throne by his son Humayun, who became the second Mughal emperor. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe. If you have any other suggestions for future topics you'd like us to cover, please leave a comment below. And we'll see you next time on History Junkie.